All right, I think we are live. Good morning, everybody. I am so honored to be here today with Adriana Monique Alvarez. She is the founder of AMA Publishing. She's the best-selling author of her own book, which I encourage you to read, How to Start a Six-Figure Publishing Company, a guide for ambitious female entrepreneurs who are ready to transform a formerly male-dominated industry. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And she's also the author of the USA Today best-selling multi-author book, The Younger Self Letters, How Successful Leaders and Entrepreneurs Turned Their Trials into Triumph, which I am loving reading. And because I know several of the authors, it has so much more impact to me. So today, she's here to sprinkle us with some of her magic and her fairy godmother dust. Because, my friends, she's all about sharing her wisdom and her experience to help you create best-selling books, create your own publishing house, or helping you to take your own business to the next level. So she does this in a no excuses, no bullshit, let's get going way, which I love. We all need that kick in the pants. So listen up, she's going to learn us something. So welcome, Adriana. I am so happy to go live with you today.
Thanks for having me, Tina. I'm so excited. This will be great.
Thanks. I am excited too. I went live the other day and I think I said excited about 6 times. And then at the end, I'm like, I guess the theme of today is I'm just really excited. So
Nothing wrong with that. We could use more of that in the world.
you know what? You're right. It's better than being hopeless or despairing or lost or confused. So you're right. I guess I'll take excited over the rest of those any day.
Definitely.
So I would love to start first about the power of human connection, because I really think that, my own journey into what's next for me in my life kind of came from this desire to be seen and heard and valued. And I think everybody really longs for that. And we all have, I've got 49 years worth of stories in me. And as people who know me, I can talk. So, that's all right. But I think those stories are what connect us. I love when people share their stories with me. And yet I think we often fear being open and vulnerable enough to share them. And yesterday during another interview, I had to laugh out loud as you said, why do people hold back? And you said it's because we think nobody cares. And of course, I have a very funny youngest child who sat at the dinner table one night listening to somebody else, not me, telling a story. And under his breath, he quipped, "Nobody cares." And we all laughed. And it was funny. And, it was a good humorous dinner time moment. But I said, no, we do care. And we do want to hear this story. So people do care. And why is it so important for them to share, for us to share our stories?
Well, like you said, at our core, who we are as humans, as a society, how everything works optimally, it's when we are connected. And words have the ability to connect us. So when I share a story, you find something in that you can relate to, that you have also experienced, that you feel. And so when I speak and you remember and you feel and we move closer and we do this over and over and over, it allows us to remember that we're all in it together, that we're all on the same side, that we all have way more in common than not. And that's actually what allows us to continuously move forward. Because if we can be in that sort of place, then whatever challenges or disagreements or places where we're not overlapping, they actually don't have to have the focus. They don't get to be the thing that sort of rips the fabric, because there's enough that's overlapping.
I think that is so, that just hits me in my heart, because I think you're right. Like, whether we're Republican or Democrat, cop or Black Lives Matter, male or female, young or old, millennial or boomer, whatever it is, I think you're right. The core trait that we all share is our humanity. And I think if we get back to that, that's how we heal ourselves. And then that's how we heal the rest of the world. And somebody recently asked me if I could have any superpower, what would it be? And, I thought about super strength and super speed. And I thought, well, if I could know things in advance, because I have anxiety. So if I could know things in advance, I could better prepare and better be ready to respond and help. And then I realized, I kind of slept on it. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, nope, I want to be a healer. I want to be a hurt people one person at a time, because I think if we can do that, it has this cumulative effect. And I shared this with my friend, and they said to me, you already are. Like, you're a
Mm.
physical therapist, you work with people with coaching, now you're telling your stories, like, you already do that. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to settle into that. That feels good.
Yes, absolutely. Those superpowers are already within us. Yes. And
Yeah.
each day we access more of them.
And our stories help us realize that, right? We gain clarity on where we've been, what our journey was, why we're here, how we
Mm.
can make an impact.
Absolutely. And, like you said, someone asked you a good question and it took you down this path and this realization and allowed you to further embrace who you already are. And that's the power of stories. That's the power of dialogue. And for me, when we are continuously putting ourselves in positions where we are having that back and forth and we're in communion and we're in conversation and we allow other people to encourage us and inspire us to go deep within ourselves so that we can actually go further out in the world, that's a great place to live.
That is so true, because I think on this journey of mine, my journey was such a solo journey. It was like done within my head, and I kept to myself because I was afraid. And I think in choosing love over fear, it's really allowed me to make these connections, like meeting Kaylee and meeting you, and kind of surrounding myself with these people that all have the same goals and aspirations for themselves and the world at large, which just raises all of our vibrations, which just feels really nice to be in that think space with these other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Who we surround ourselves with matters.
definitely, definitely. And I think, you are such an inspiration because you have your core family and you make so much time for them, and you obviously so enjoy all the things you do with them, but then you share that joy with your tribe, and you're so welcoming to your family, which is such an incredible gift.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. So, who or what inspired you to tell your story?
Mm, I would say that the biggest point of transition or the biggest aha moment I had was when I had two babies in 12 months because I had to reevaluate everything. So I had my time as a solo traveler. I had my time being married and building a business for 7 years. And then these two little beings popped into my world. And I realized, oh, everything now changes. The way I arrange my day, where my priorities are, how I feel about the world, what matters most, because kids have that unique gift, right? They will put you in a position where the things that didn't really matter, you suddenly get it and they fall away. And the things that really, really matter, they're right in front of you. And so when I had my boys, I really began to realize that when I'm at the end of my life, what do I want them to say about me? And I didn't want it to come down to achievements. I didn't want it to come down to anything that I had followed in terms of society's sort of success checklist. I wanted them to know who I really was, what I stood for. And what began to percolate and had layers that went with it, because I transferred my business online when I had babies, is I realized if I don't talk about who I am and what I value and why I'm actually here, no one will know. Not my audience for my business, not my children, not those who read my books. Literally, we could pass through this life and no one could know who we really are at our core. And I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And so I began this journey of how much am I willing to share, whether it's stories about motherhood or stories about my adventures and my travels. How far was I willing to go? And then it was sort of capped when I got pregnant with my third child, and I had a stillbirth at 38 weeks. And everyone, I live in a public space. My business is online. Everybody has been watching this journey for 9 months. And I had to make the decision, is this going to be something I talk about or something I tuck away and continue to make a subject that is taboo, that we're silent on, that we just move on? And that's when I really realized the power of stories, because I had women reach out to me and said, I've never heard anyone talk about having a stillbirth until I met you.
I can connect with you on that. I think motherhood and our children, and what a shame it would be to have passed through this life and not have realized our own full potential, and not to have allowed our light to shine and to have the impact on other people. And I think it is, you went through that transition in a public space. I went through that transition in a private space. And now I'm kind of realizing, like, I can, even if it helps one person feel better about their experience, because they're like, I've been there and I feel that, and I'm not alone. And my boys are older, so you got to learn that lesson of wisdom before your children came along. I am in this transitional shift with my children right now, where I sometimes feel they look at me and they're like, who are you? Like, I don't know who you are right now. You've been in my life for, 21 or 16 or 12 years. And now you have an opinion. Now you have a thought. Now you want to talk about this thing. Like, and it's a challenge, but it's a really, to me, worthy challenge, because it's making me a better person. And I think it's making them better young men for the world. And I think it's also making our relationship with each other better. So again, one by one, it has that empowering effect on everybody.
Absolutely.
Love that. So I want to talk about your business and your publishing company, because I know you said you started it kind of in the real world, brick and mortar, BNI at the beginning, and then you put it online. And so you have a publishing company. You created an academy to teach women how to start their own publishing company. So why publishing? Why women? Like, why has that become your passion?
Well, it didn't start out as my passion. So when we first started our business and I was in those settings, I was oftentimes one of 2 or 3 women in a BNI group. When we lived in San Diego, there was literally a sea of navy blue suits, and then there was me. And so most of our clientele, and I mean like 99.9% of our clientele for the first 7 years, were men. They were the most driven. They were the most competitive. They paid the highest rates. They absolutely knew where they were going. They focus on numbers. They focus on, return on investment. And that was the language we spoke, right? We took brick and mortar business owners. We put their business online. We helped them get on social media. We could track clicks and dollars and all of these things. And so they loved it. And I loved it because it kept things very clear, easy. This is what you're paying for. This is what you get. And that was how I ran my business for the first 7 years. I had no deep relationships with a single client before I had my boys. It was all business. And once I had my boys, the male clientele instantly disappeared. They just moved out and they moved on. I could begin to sense it. I was going to BNI until the week before I gave birth with my first son. And I could already feel this distance happening. And I think it's an interesting thing when we become a mother, we're heightened. Our intuition goes sky high. And I began to feel a huge shift, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And by the time Grant had come along, they were just all gone. I think we might have had one male client that hung on for another year. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it because I didn't have the opportunity to think of it. I was literally deep in the trenches. I had a baby in both arms. I was sleeping a couple hours a night. But as I look back, I realize now that when new moves in, what is current must move out. There has to be space created. And oftentimes when things move out of our lives, when people move out of our lives, we freak out because it feels scary, and it can also feel like rejection and like a personal attack. But I see now that they had to go in order for my truest work to move in. And that's what women did. Women moved in instantly. And that's when I began to realize other mothers were fine if I was going live with my baby in my arms. They were okay if I was, feeding them while I was doing a call. And nothing about having children with me or speaking about motherhood or understanding that we had had a rough night, nothing about that turned them off. And so the women really chose me. Women and mothers chose me, and then I went on to embrace them. And the reason I'm passionate about teaching women how to start their own publishing house is because almost no publishing houses are owned by women. And for me, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Why not? Why don't we get to hold those positions? Why don't we get to be the gatekeepers and say, yes, actually, your story does matter? Just because 300 of the other ones said no, I see the power in your story, and I want to give you an opportunity. And that's why I do what I do.
Love that. And I think it's so true in every profession. I know for me in physical therapy, it was that way as well. You did all your training, you did all your certifications, you became the senior therapist, and then it was time to have a baby. And then that changed your professional trajectory. And I think that you're right. I think that motherhood does hone our feminine instincts, our intuition, our ability to nurture and connect with another human being, because we're feeding them and we're staying up all night with them, but also to have these kind of soul nourishing conversations with people that matter. And I love that you're embracing women, because as a female, like, I need that. I need a strong female to show me, to point me in the direction and say, just go do it today. And I so appreciate that. And then as a mom of 3 boys, I kind of also look back in sadness for the fact that all of those men in business moved out, because I think as a mom of 3 boys, I look at the impact the patriarchy has on me as a woman, but I also think it has such an impact on the men as well, because they were raised in that same faulty paradigm. And so those poor men in blue suits in San Diego, and our paths might have crossed because I went to San Diego State. So I'm
Oh, wow.
girl originally. But I think, those poor men in blue suits, like, they need to connect with their emotions and their humanity and their vulnerability. And we need a space in this world for them to share that as well. So I'm all about the female empowerment, but I also feel like we don't just need to empower women. We can empower men and encourage them to take this new journey with us and create just a better space for all. They can ditch the suits too if they want.
Right. We'll be okay with it. No, it's true, because
a date, but other than that.
I see that as women find their own way of doing business, it gives more men permission to maybe not spend dinner at the office, maybe take the weekend off to just go play, to maybe be okay if their kids are running around in the background while they're running a Zoom call. And so it's allowing us to go, you know what? The old rules don't apply anymore. So how do we really want to do this?
I think that is so critical for all of us as we come through this past year and the pandemic, and kind of evaluating, where did our career take us, or how did it feel to be taken out of society? How do we want to reintegrate in society? So I think we are definitely on the forefront of a new world order here. I don't know. It's exciting to, it's definitely been a challenge to go through, but it's also exciting to be part of that change.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit more about your publishing model. So it's not just hey, let's get to the book. That's not the finish line, which I think is such an incredible way to look at it, because in writing my own solo book, to me, that was my mindset. I want to get this story out, and then I want to write the next one and the next one and the next one. But you have kind of a unique perspective on that for authors, in how that ties into connecting with their clientele and networking, and kind of taking that story and putting it into their business model and then enhancing their business. Could you share a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most authors, like you said, they think there's so much energy and focus that goes into writing a book. It's just what it takes to make it happen. And so writing a book is almost like when we get pregnant. When I got pregnant with my first son, all this focus was on the pregnancy and what kind of birth do you want to have, and oh my goodness, how do you want to bring this baby into the world? And when I had Sam, I realized, holy shit, nobody said anything about when I bring this baby home. What am I doing? What do I do? I don't know what he wants. How come he won't sleep? What is this what it's supposed to be like? This is the most chaotic thing I've ever experienced, right? And then I was like, oh my God, I'm not equipped for this. I focused on 9 months and a 3-hour delivery, and I spent no time thinking about the rest of his life, right? And where do I support and nurture him? And the same is true for a book. Once the book is released, that's when the journey really starts. The baby is in your hands, so to speak. And so I like to teach my clients, once you birth this book, it would be sad. It's okay. it would be sad to leave it there. But what happens is that so much goes into it. It's almost like we need a breath, right? Like, and it's fine. It's fine to take a breath, and it's good to have support. Just like I learned, there was people I would call and I'd say, come hold Sam. I need to take a 45-minute shower and breathe. So we have to have a plan, and we have to see all that can happen on the back end of a book. And that's what I love to show people. It would be a loss. It would be short-sighted not to sell out programs to get clients to make $100,000 or $300,000 on the back end of that book. Not talking about book sales, right? It would be a shame if you didn't use it to build your network and have people that you could collaborate with. It would be a shame if you didn't let the media and all of the major outlets know who you are and why you wrote your book and why it matters to the world. So those are the things that I'm constantly pushing my clients to do, because we will tend to stop and go, I did it. I checked it off the list. I accomplished it. Okay, what's next? Without looking at those 3 major things.
And I think that's so important, because no matter what route an author goes, right? Whether they, set their sights on that traditional, I'm going to get a traditional book deal or not, or I'm going to self-publish or go with an indie publishing house to do this. I think we have to look back at our vision as a writer. What is my goal? I know that I had a friend kind of question that for me after Significant Women came out. And she said, are you really going to go through this 18 to 24 month process of book proposals and all that stuff? She's like, your book's ready. Like, you spent the money, you spent the time, you did the developmental editing, you did the line and copy editing, because I wanted to know it was my best work before I put it out there. And she's like, in your chapter, you talked about setting your own metrics for success. And she's like, do you really need traditional publishing to validate you? And I was like, oof, okay, mirror being held up, Thank you, Cindy, for sharing that with me. But like, what a powerful moment. I was like, wow, I wrote a chapter, it impacted somebody else, they reflected it back to me, and it made me pause and say, hey, like, I can do this a different way. And what is the different way? How do I want to do that? And then the younger self letters came out. I read Kaylee's chapter. I sent her a personal text to just say how her story impacted me. And bam, she's standing next to you in Sedona. And the next thing I know, you and I are on the phone. And it's like, I do trust in the universe to show me what's next. And it's like, okay, this is where I go next. So, I think it's amazing how, as you write your story and you gain your own clarity and you start putting yourself out there and you make that commitment, in writing, in verbiage, here I am ready, things just start, snowballing, and it's incredible.
Yep, they sure do. Things will start clicking every step we take.
Right. So let's talk travel, because you brought that up, and I know that we both have a passion for that. So I definitely was jealous when we spoke when you were in Sedona. Jealous but happy for you. I'm very capable of that. But I was like, wow, I can't wait till the world opens up and my life changes and I can get back to traveling, because I have always found that when I travel, I grow and I learn something on that trip from that, location within the continental US, and I've been all over it. And, since I turned 40, I woke up the morning of my 40th birthday in Ireland. That was kind of my new, I wanted to work on my ME degree, my
Mm.
life degree. So that kind of started at 40. But I feel that I didn't realize I was looking for this, but it was just something that presented itself to me when I was there. I come home with something that I learned
Mm.
and I integrated into my life. So when I went to Ireland, it was that sense of community, the stopping at the pub and the storytelling and the simple things in life, family, friends, life experiences. And then I was fortunate enough that my kids were like, well, we want to travel. So I'm trying to take each one of my boys at a certain milestone, get a passport, get them out of our country, see something different. So my oldest and I were in Italy when he was 15. And in Italy, what I realized was I never paused to appreciate my meal times. They were always, I was
Mm.
like, can I just plug myself in, recharge, and keep going? That was kind of how I looked at food. But instead, I realized it was about that soul nourishing, savoring my meal, savoring the conversation, savoring the person that I was with as nourishment. And I love family meal times here. It's just that's always for me an important thing. I got to take a trip to Mexico for my cousin's 40th birthday, and she was the one who went to Ireland with me on my 40th. But that trip was all about female connection and empowerment. It was a large group of women, all from her life. And that was, again, a new lesson for me because I'd never had that in my life. And then I
Mm.
was fortunate enough to go to Paris before everything closed down. And I grew up, Paris was my number one destination because I don't know, it was the city of love and light. And I took French in high school. That's what was available, and Spanish in California growing up. Those were your
Yeah.
choices. But I actually fell in love with myself. I was writing my own book,
Mm.
Loved, and working on that while I went on that trip. And I fell in love with myself and with my life. And that was just like
Mm.
a powerful lesson that I brought home. So I know that travel has been an important part of your life. And I would love to know, you talked about the key values you brought home, and you kind of know I got a thing for keys here, right? The key to wellness, the key publishing. Keys are a powerful image to me. So I'd love to know about these keys that kind of helped you unlock yourself and your values during your travels that you've brought home and are carrying into your life now.
Mm. Great question. Yeah, so that was the number one thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to travel. And growing up in a small town, sometimes people don't leave the county, much less the state, much less the country. And both sides of my family are from this same small town and they're pioneers. So it goes back 4 or 5 generations and they just don't leave. And so when I said I wanted to travel the world, it was like, we don't do that. Why do you need to do that? Right. You got everything you need right here. I'm opening up the keys. So I remember what I told you.
That's okay.
And so of course, what that resulted in is me turning 19 and going exactly on the other side of the world to Myanmar as a volunteer. And then I went to Albania and then to Africa. I spent some time in Kenya. And then once my boys were born, we traveled full time for 5 years. And when I first came back home from my travels at 27 with malaria, I was looking around at all of my friends who had sort of taken the traditional route, and they got married, they bought homes, they graduated from college, they had that corporate job. And I didn't even know that world at all. I had been living in a whole, like, it was like another planet. But like you said, the things that stood out to me and the things that really still stay with me is that I realized through solo travel that I'm way braver and more capable than I ever imagined, because growing up in a small town and growing up in a family where, it was always the boys, the boys were allowed to do things and the girls are kind of like, you need to be a little bit more careful. I actually didn't know how much I could do. And I didn't know how resourceful I was. It was when I was overseas by myself, thousands of miles away from anyone who could assist me, that I realized I could figure it out. And I figured it out by connecting with everyone who was around me. I also realized, and today I have an appreciation for the world, for I love that I have clients in 36 or 38 countries because they each bring something different and it layers the experience. It's much richer and they have a different perspective and different point of view, and they make me think about it in a new way. Mm-hmm. And the third key that I got was obviously being outside of the US. I knew that I would never be like eating at my desk. I wouldn't be a slave, like a modern day slave in society's success circle. I knew that I would never put my work over my family, that I would never sacrifice my health for any sort of achievement. And really what travel showed me was what matters. And it's so easy to forget about that in a fast-paced society. And when you have to slow down, like most of the world lives, it really begins to sink in what matters.
So true. So true. And, I think our lives have been flipped. I'm still a slave to the desk job. I work in academia and I love my students because they bring in new perspectives. And I think sharing my journeys and my life experiences really is what has taken me from that physical therapy place of let's treat the thing that's injured in the body to back that up. Let's prevent that stuff from happening. Oh, back that up a little more. I know all about your body, but what really matters to me is your heart, your mind, and your soul. And that is all connected. So that holistic wellness piece is so key to me. And I would, I have to write in lunch to remind myself to eat, which is not healthy. And so I feel like I want to be courageous and lead by example and say, no. I'm an introvert. I've got to shut my door and like recharge and recenter before I go and talk for 3 more hours. And my students come to the bathroom with me. We take bathroom breaks and they follow and they chat, which on one hand, I love because we're just so connected and the conversation has to continue. But then there's also that piece where it's like, I just need a moment, So I think that's so true. And gaining those other perspectives. And then, like you said, seeing how the rest of the world operates. I think you're familiar with the charity that I support, Elamu Girls, and they're in Malindi, Kenya. And, her story is our story, and empowering her and giving her a voice and a choice, and preventing the female genital mutilation and letting her be educated and empowering her with a sewing machine and a job, and giving her a voice in her community and letting her be a leader. That's a universal theme. I'm here doing it, the US way, and she's there doing it the Kenyan way. But as women, we can connect and find that commonality and empower both of us and inspire both of us and others, hopefully, to live in a better way that feels good and empowering to all of us.
Absolutely. I think this is what living overseas really taught me is how we live our life, how life feels on an everyday basis. That's what we really have to look at. It's not the once in a while experiences, but how are we living every day? And does that feel good?
Mm-hmm. I ask myself that question every day because I can get stuck in the past, or I can future trip, or I can choose to be here in this moment right now with you. And I can breathe and I can tune into my body and say, does this feel good? Does this feel right? And if it doesn't, then I got to make a change. Right. And if it does, then it's like, ooh, this is good. This is a good place to be.
That's right.
So let's talk about the magic that's coming up next week. So next Wednesday night, July 21st, well, it's night for us here in New York because 5 p.m. Eastern time, and then I'll let y'all convert that to where you are. So I have to always do that on my app, and then I have to write it down to make sure I get it right with my people in the UK and over in Australia and on the West Coast. But you're offering a free masterclass to show people how to turn their story into something magical and impactful. So what can we expect from that event?
Well, I almost said I have no idea because I always have an outline, and then everything I receive is channeled usually about 2 hours before I have to present it. But really what it is about, and the reason I created this and why I was guided to do this, is because it's easy to underestimate the power of our story. It's easy to look at other people and go, well, if I had a story like that, oh yes, then I would tell it. Then I would do that. And so what I'm going to be sharing is how do you take your story and how do you take it as far and wide as you possibly can? And how can you honor it? Because what I've learned is, to the degree I honor myself and I acknowledge and see myself, then in that same proportion, others can do the same. So it's really about allowing ourselves to go, yes, my experiences matter and they're not just for me. So we're going to give a broader perspective and tune into, why are we here? And how did we get connected? There's no accident. So what are we here to co-create together?
Mm-hmm. And I think, you often remind us that the clarity of our message matters. And so really kind of getting into like, what am I here to share today? What is the message that's in my heart or in my mind or in my soul or coming from my body that I can share to help benefit people? And I thought about, so she picked these words, magic and impactful. And I think you just gave me the why for that. So that magic is what's inside each of us, because we're each unique and we've each lived our own life. And that magic is finding that spark in ourselves. And then that impact is sharing that spark and letting it grow into a fire so it can impact others. And I thank you for that, like that wisdom. I told people you were going to be sprinkling fairy dust and learning us something, but that's really insightful. So thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you allowing me to come share it.
Oh, thanks for being here with me. And thank you for being on this journey with me. I really, like I said, there's a whole lot of excitement in my life. So that's good. I'm excited. It feels good. It feels holistically, well and right for me. And I just thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with everybody today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to having you at the masterclass.
Oh, I will see you there. Definitely. Thank you so much.